What do you think the other side is thinking about right now? The Sarah Brady crowd. You think they're worried? Should they be worried?
They're scared out of their minds, and they should be. I mean, if we make this breakthrough, it's as I've said, by no means the end of the issue. It just starts into the battle over reasonable regulation. But from their standpoint, it'll be a big morale blow. I mean, suddenly it's recognized that they're attacking a constitutional right. And they have to fall back on, well, we're just putting a few reasonable regulations on it. But still there's the morale change but you're attacking a constitutional right, people. They would be fearful of that.
I know several people who are pro-gun control. And after the Parker decision came out, I thought it'd be curious to see what they have to say, and most interesting, and they were just silent.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I mean, they just got kicked in the guts, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're scared. And, like I say, demoralized.
What should our side be worried about, though?
Well, there's always the worry of losing. Like I say, I'm pretty sure if 4 votes, but if all 5 remaining go against us, we could lose.
If we lose, then what?
Well, that's the funny part. If we lose as a practical matter, it doesn't hurt us a great deal. If the other side loses, it hurts them a great deal. If it hurts us, if we lose, well, to tell you the truth, how many politicians out there, apart from Ron Paul probably, refuse to vote for gun control because they think it's unconstitutional, even though they really like the idea? Okay.
You can run that by me again?
How many politicians out there think gun control is a good idea and they'd like to vote for it, but they're not going to vote for it because they think it's unconstitutional?
I don't know of any who would have that kind of an approach. You think that's what Ron Paul is thinking about?
Well, actually, I think he probably isn't an exception either. I think he probably thinks gun control is stupid, and so he wouldn't vote for it even if it was constitutional. But what I'm saying is the number of politicians who vote against it based purely upon their view of the Constitution is probably 0. So from our standpoint, even if we lose in the Supreme Court, it doesn't really change the equation much. I mean, politicians will either vote our way out of a judgment that gun laws are stupid, or they fear what would happen among the voters, or they won't. And whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional won't change that calculus any. So as a practical matter, I don't know that it actually changes. Obviously, winning it would help us. But losing it, I don't know if it changes the calculus a great deal on whether gun laws get passed or not.
If we were to lose, would it simply encourage the Brady group?
Yeah, it would encourage them.
And judges who are sympathetic to them?
Yeah, they'd feel somewhat freer to move for gun control and that sort of thing. But I don't think it would change the picture in the legislature any. So, yeah, it would be a morale blow to us and a help to them.
Speaking of them, the Brady group, can we just spend a moment helping people understand the strange position they take that gun ownership is a collective right, so that people better understand the mentality and thinking of the Brady crowd? Oh, yeah.
Well, it's hard to explain reasonably, but the traditional argument against, you might say, against the Second Amendment goes like this. The first part of the Second Amendment talks about a well-regulated militia. Therefore, that must be all that it's concerned with. Therefore, this right of the people to keep and bear arms should only be understood as allowing a state to have a well-regulated militia, which in the modern day means the National Guard. So this is all about allowing the states to have National Guard type units, and that's all that it is, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether you can own a handgun in the District of Columbia as an individual. That would be just about the core of the collective right thing. Lately, Professor Saul Cornell has tried to evolve what you could call a sophisticated collective rights view, which is more like the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to own guns. However, it only applies to you if you are in some way connected to a well-regulated militia, which achieves the same effect.
Well, they need to look at an old dictionary from many, many years ago where the term regulated talks about well-drilled and prepared, and has nothing to do with government control.
Oh, yeah. I found a reference to it in the 1600s, well-regulated troops, meaning troops that were properly disciplined and knew how to do what they had to do.
Well, you and I had a chance to work on a project together. It's a documentary film called The Gang. You were the scriptwriter, and I was the guy who simply paid the bills. No, it's known as the producer. But the purpose of The Gang is to put the 68 Gun Control Act and the BATFE on trial, expose their nasty past, and try to encourage Americans to come to the conclusion that this is an agency that has outlived its usefulness, if it ever was useful. And I'm just wondering, how is the gang going to work with what's happening with Parker, whatever way the Parker decision goes, whatever the Supreme Court rules or doesn't rule? And how can people use the gang to help many other people, including gun owners, understand why gun control in America must be abolished?
I think the gang is more useful in the PR realm than in the courtroom. Obviously, we can't get the Supreme Court to sit down and watch it, but in terms of achieving public relations, it can be important. I mean, the civil rights movement in the South owed a great deal to things like Bull O'Connor, was it Bull Connor? Now I forget which, attacking civil rights protesters with attack dogs and water hoses, because it brought the issue to everybody's attention and showed who were the real oppressors. And that started changing the public opinion, which in turn changed the angle the courts were taking on it from the original process, which was you've got to desegregate, but take your time about it, whatever the phrase was, all due speed, all due, not forgotten, but it was something that left some leeway. That sort of response played a role in eventually turning the court around to decide that all due deliberation meant, no, you're going to end it now. And I think that's where the gang could come in terms of changing the public opinion, which in turn changes the environment in which the court will be issuing rulings in the future.
So we could say that the gang would be useful in winning hearts and minds.
Exactly.
And that's the way it should be used. I mean, that was the purpose of producing the film, and that was the structure of it. Well, we just have to remind people if they want to change hearts and minds and get rid of gun control, they'll have to watch The Gang. David, we're at the end of our program, and I want to thank you very much for coming on today. This has been Talkin to America. Our guest has been David Hardy. I'm your host, Aaron Zellman. And please remember, if you won't defend your rights, don't complain when you lose them.
Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of JPFO.org or its members. Talkin to America is a production of JPFO.org.